Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us to the Dental Assistant Council meeting. My name is Tracy Reed Espinoza. I am the chair of the Dental Assistant Council. Today is Thursday, February 9th, 2023. The Dental Assistant Council meeting is being held via teleconference with a disclosed in-person location, available for the council members and public members to participate. For all of those who wish to participate online, please log in to the WebEx website provided in the posted agenda for the meeting. Instructions to connect to the meeting are provided on the agenda. The preferred audio connection is via telephone conference, not the microphone and the speaker on the computer. The phone number to access code will be provided as part of your connection to this meeting. During each call and comment from the Dental Assistant Council members and speakers will be ensured that all comments that can be accommodated and heard before proceeding with the agenda. This is an official meeting of the Dental Assistant Council. The Council welcomes public comments on any item on the agenda, and it is the Council's intent to ask public comments prior to the Council taking action on any agenda item. The DCA moderator will explain the process and provide public comments shortly. For individuals participating via WebEx, when called upon, the moderator will give an individual permission to unmute themselves, and then will have 2 minutes to make a public comment. The moderator will audibly announce, then a 30-second remain and continue with the public comment. After 2 minutes have lapsed, the individual will be placed on mute. Only one public comment per agenda item is allowed per attendee. Depending on the number of people who will like to testify on a particular agenda item, the total time limit may be imposed. We ask all speakers to please stay on topic and not repeat testimony already provided. If you agree with testimony already provided, please state your name and that you are in support of comments previously provided. I will now like to ask the DCA moderator to please explain public comments taken during the meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the moderator of the meeting. For purposes of today's meeting, when the council chair opens public comment, members of the public who would like to provide public comment at our DCA location in Sacramento can approach the table and microphone at the front of the room. For those joining via WebEx, we will be utilizing the WebEx question and answer feature, also referred to as the Q&A panel, to facilitate public comment. When the council reaches a point in the agenda at which public comment is appropriate, the question and answer feature will be turned on, and members of the public can indicate they would like to make a comment by inserting the phrase, "I would like to make a comment," in the question box, which is typically in the lower right of your screen. The moderator will then call on the individual and give the individual permission to unmute their microphone. The individual will have 2 minutes to make their comments. At the conclusion of 2 minutes, the individual's microphone will be muted, and we will move on to the next member of the public who has a comment. Please note that the question and answer feature is being used only as a means for the members of the public to represent that they would like to make a verbal comment. This is not a means to ask questions of the moderator or members of the council. Questions submitted using this feature will not be answered. When making your comment, please make sure the comment is directed at the host in the dropdown. While you are free to express criticism or negative views for the sake of members of the public participating on the call, please do not use profane language when making public comments to the council. I will provide a brief reminder of this approach at the start of each public comment item. And with that, I return the floor back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I would like to call the meeting to order and ask the board staff to call the roll.
Good morning. My name is Morella Turan. I will now call the roll. Epps Robbins.
Present.
Fowler.
Present.
Miyazaki.
Present.
Olagi.
Olagi, present.
Pacheco,
Pacheco, present.
Bliss,
Bliss, present.
Reed Espinoza.
Present.
A quorum has been established.
Thank you. We will now move on to item agenda number 2, public comments on items not on the agenda. Before we open to public comments on a matter on the agenda, I would like to remind everyone, public comments should be addressed to the council as a whole, not to an individual member. Please be aware public comments during the agenda item should provide information to the council members, but is not a discussion between council members and the public. The only action council members can take right now is to listen to the comments and decide whether they would want in the future agenda items on this topic. Though this may seem at times like the council members are not being responsive, following these guidelines is critical to ensure the rules of an open meeting actions are followed to avoid compromising the speaker's goals and the council's mission. In interest of time, as we have done in the past, we would like to request the public comments not repeat the statements made by a prior commentator. If you are in support of the statements made by a prior individual and your comments have already been, please state your name, association, and your previous commentator. Legislative hearings regularly use this practice as is a good way to ensure that we can hear from everyone today. Are there any in-person public comments?
Good morning. I'm Melody Randolph, and I am the current president of the California Association of Dental Assisting Teachers, and I'm here representing the Dental Assisting Alliance, which is a partnership between KDAT, the CDAA, and the EF Association. We'd like to bring to your attention a bill being introduced by CDA, authored by Assemblymember Carrillo, and it's AB 481. This bill is quite extensive and addresses many areas of the scope of practice for dental auxiliaries. The Alliance has met with CDA on a number of occasions to discuss this bill. We believe that these meetings have been less than productive, and though they would probably characterize them as collaborative, our questions and concerns have been met with defensive rebuttal. Though we are not entirely opposed to some of the critical changes this bill would make to our scope of practice, most notably removing the on-the-job trained pathway to RDA licensure and replacing it with what they're calling a preceptorship, we find many areas of concern in the details, and the execution of these changes would be extremely difficult given the confusing language of the bill. The Alliance has hired a lobbyist and will oppose this bill unless our concerns are fully heard, and we work collaboratively with them to amend the problematic areas of the language. We urge all members of the DAC, as well as members of the full board, to spend time reading this bill, as it will have significant ramifications on the dental board and the dental assisting profession at large. Thank
30
you.
seconds.
Do we have any public comment on WebEx?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The question and answer panel is available. If any member of the public would like to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists, or you may simply raise your hand. Individuals who've called into the meeting may raise their hand by pressing *3. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no request for comment. Madam Chair, would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes.
Okay, it's closed.
Chair Reed Espinoza, is it possible to make a comment about one of the public comments? Part of the instructions initially on the public comment portion is that the council is receiving public comments, but it's not going to discuss what the public comments said. But perhaps you can determine whether or not to add an agenda item at a future meeting to have more discussion about that issue.
Thank you. Thank you. We will now move on to agenda number 3, discussion and possible action on November 17th, 2022 meeting minutes. Is there any council member discussion? There is no members that want to discuss. Is there a motion to move forward?
Miyazaki would like to make a motion to accept the minutes.
Pacheco, second.
Mrs. Miyazaki first, Pacheco second. And the minutes have been approved. To approve the minutes. Proper wording. Is there any public comment? Is there any WebEx comments? DC moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've opened up the question and answer panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on this agenda item, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists, or simply raise your hand or displaying instructions, and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel? Okay, it's closed.
Thank you, board staff. Please call the roll and record the votes for the agenda item.
This is Morella Turan. The motion is to approve the November 17, 2022 meeting minutes. I will now call the roll. Epps Robbins,
Epps Robbins, approve.
Fowler,
Fowler, aye.
Miyazaki,
Miyazaki, aye.
Olagi,
Olagi, yes.
Pacheco,
Pacheco, aye.
Bliss,
Bliss, yes.
Reed Espinoza.
Yes.
The motion passed.
Thank you. We are now moving on to agenda item number 4, Executive Officer's Report.
Good morning. Tracy Montez, Executive Officer of the Dental Board of California. I'd like to provide a brief update as I do at the board meetings. I thought it would be appropriate to also do it at the council meeting. So I would like to share with you that we have had 2 new board members reappointed. Dr. Felsenfeld and Dr. Thacker were reappointed, so congratulations. I'd also like to introduce Christy Bell, our new Assistant Executive Officer, and she's in the back. Christy, if you could just stand up. Very happy to have her here. She comes from the Arbitration Certification Program, where I worked with her very closely, and she has, again, a long history with the Department of Consumer Affairs. So very excited to have her on board here at the Dental Board. Also, I would like to share that we technically have 12 vacancies out of our 84 positions. Of those 12, two are our investigators, and they are currently in various phases of the background. And then the other 10 positions are in various stages of the selection process. So very happy to report that no positions are just open with no action being taken. So we're very excited. We know we're going to likely have some more positions open because we do potentially anticipate some promotions within the board, again, through the competitive process. But what I'm trying to say is that we have individuals that are very excited to promote, and so we're thrilled with those opportunities. Tomorrow at the board meeting, we will have our complaint and compliance staff here to introduce you to them. One of the things that Christy and I would like to do is at our Sacramento meetings is bring in some of the staff. In addition to the new staff, which we did at the last board meeting, we'd like to bring in the various units, introduce them, and just give a 2-minute, briefing on what these individuals or these units do so that you can become acquainted with the various units and divisions within the board. So you'll get to meet them tomorrow at the board meeting. As far as licensing goes, I'd like to share with our registered dental assisting programs, we are processing applications that have been received at the end of January. The same is true for our DDS applications. We are anticipating graduation coming up. That's a question that I've been asked, and we do have staff. We have a strategy for addressing this onslaught of applications that I've been told occurs when we have graduation for our dentists. We also, with regard to the dental assisting programs, we did have our on-site program and course evaluators. We're just here. They've been on-site twice. We just recently had 5 new courses approved in 1 program. So again, we are getting through that backlog, and we're very thankful for them and their time to come and do this. We are also beginning continuing education audits, and so we will be randomly selecting 1% of our licensees to do the continuing ed audits, and I can tell you that it's been a very interesting process learning who is actually doing their continuing ed and being timely and keeping those certificates. So we're doing a lot of education and letting folks know that the audits are happening. We also, with regard to the Schedule II opioid courses, we have 21 that are approved. We have been approving them within a week or so, and I'm happy to report that our mandatory course providers are now online so that individuals can go and look those up. We do have a caveat on there that, this is a fluid list, and so it's important to check as you sign up and take your courses. Finally, DCA has a new logo, so you may notice our letterhead is a little different. You'll probably hear more about that at the board meeting when we have our DCA representative come in and talk about that. But again, you will see as we transition our letterhead, there will be different logos than you have traditionally seen. And lastly, I'm very happy to announce that we will be publishing, fingers crossed, a newsletter in May. Apparently, we have not had a newsletter since 2017, and this is something that the prior management leadership had wanted to reestablish, and so we have an individual who I will introduce tomorrow that is taking the lead on the newsletter, and we have various staff that will be participating in it. I will tell you it's going to be a brief newsletter because we have a series of approvals that we need to run it by, reviews, and so we want to be sensitive to everybody that's involved. So you can anticipate that as we produce additional issues, it will be a bit more lengthy, but again, very excited to do this. And finally, I'd just like to conclude again by thanking the staff at the dental board who amaze me every day and keep me really busy and continue to educate me in this position. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Is there any council member discussion? Are there any in-person public comments?
John Greenfield, representing the EF Association. I just wanted to make a comment to Ms. Montez that in the length of time that dental assisting has been under the purview of the dental board, around 2010, we've never had an executive officer respond so quickly to our requests and comments, and we really appreciate what you're doing and the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any public comments from individuals participating via WebEx. DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on agenda item 4, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and submit it to all panelists, or simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no request for comment at this time. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item number 5, update on dental assisting exam statistics. I'm going to ask that Ricky Parks, dental assistant unit manager, please present the agenda item.
Thank you and good morning, Chair Reed, Espinoza, and members of the council. My name is Ricky Parks, Dental Assisting Program Manager, and I will be presenting agenda item number 5. The board currently offers 4 written examinations: the Registered Dental Assistant, General and Law and Ethics written exam, the Registered Dental Assistant and Extended Functions written exam, the Orthodontic Assistant Permit written exam, and the Dental Sedation Assistant Permit written exam. The table that begins on page 16 of your meeting materials includes candidates who attempted dental assisting examinations this fiscal year and the past 3 fiscal years. There is no action requested on this item, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Council, do we have any questions for her? No? Thank you, Ricky. You can proceed. Are there any questions on the WebEx? Any comments? CC moderator, can you please facilitate public comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Q&A panel is now available. If any member of the public would like to comment on agenda item 5, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, or simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no request for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We will now move on to agenda item number 6, update on Registered Dental Assistant Expanded Functions General Exam written. I'm going to ask Mrs. Parks to present that agenda item.
Thank you again, Chair Reed Espinoza. My name is Ricky Parks. I'm the Dental Assisting Program Manager. In response to the concerns expressed at previous Dental Assisting Council meetings regarding the performance of the Registered Dental Assistant in Extended Functions written examination, OPES has prepared a memo to update the Council, which begins on page 20 of your meeting materials. As discussed in the memo, OPES rigorously monitors the examination, including individual questions, to ensure candidates are fairly assessed on critical job-related competencies. There is no action required on this item, and OPES is available to take any questions you may have.
How many questions are on the written test at this time for EF2?
There are 100 scoreable.
Okay.
Ms. Fowler, go ahead.
Hi, this is Jerry Fowler. I had a question in the report from that's in our handouts here. It says educators can encourage candidates to provide comments on any questions that they think are problematic. And OPES test specialists review the comments regularly. Where do the candidates provide comments on the questions that they think are problematic?
So there is a tool, when the candidate is testing, there is a tool that they can type in questions or concerns while taking the exam, and those are part of the monitoring that OPES conducts.
And this is Tracy Montez. There are also postcards that candidates can take if they don't want to enter it into online during the exam or after the exam. They can complete a postcard, send it in. They can also contact the board, and then the board would forward comments to OPS. So there's various avenues of providing that feedback.
Thank you.
Are there any in-person public comments? What, did I miss one? I apologize. Epps Robbins, you can go.
Thank you. I did have a question in regards to the comments. If an individual sees that there is or finds a test question that they can't find any validity to, where they've studied and this question is approached and there's no supportive document within their study material that they can find the answer to have answered that question. If those concerns are arise, at what point is this eliminated from the exam, or is this readdressed and the study materials are updated so that the exam does not have any changes to it? How is that going to be handled?
Ms. Okasich, would you like to take that question, or would you like me to? Moderators, Ms. Okasich on the line? If not, I'll be happy to answer this question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just checking our attendees, and I'm not finding her.
Okay, I'll be happy to answer that question. Okay, so the exam questions or items go through a rigorous validation process. They are written by subject matter experts that are licensees. They are reviewed. They are selected for a particular exam, and then they are put on the particular exam form. So at all times, the questions are reviewed for licensees to confirm their validity. Also, it is important to note that when a test question is written, it is written to a reference and to the exam plan. The exam plan is linked to the occupational analysis, which is the large-scale study that determines what are critical competencies that are to be expected at the time of licensure. So we have a whole series of exam development steps to ensure the validity of the question. Now, having said that, if, for example, an item escapes review, and this does happen occasionally, for example, new law is passed and something changes, the Office of Professional Examination Services is monitoring the exam and the statistics or the comments would indicate that possibly something has changed and the item has to be reevaluated. If that is the case, it is pulled, it is reevaluated by psychometricians and subject matter experts, and then a decision is made whether to retain it in the exam or to eliminate it. If it is eliminated, the exam is rescored and individuals are given credit. We never penalize candidates for questions that may have escaped that intense review process. But it's very important to remember that the exam is not tied to the academic school program directly. It is not a final exam. It is a licensure exam which narrows the focus to what is most critical for entry to licensure, and that is what the exam is based on. So If for some reason there is a concern about the validity of the item, please bring it to OPS's attention or the board's attention. But again, that is very rare that that happens. And I do see that Karen is on the line, who's available if she would like to add anything more to that.
And Karen, this is the moderator. You are
Hello.
unmuted. We can hear you.
Hi. So I apologize for that. I was here with my hand up, but Tracy actually did an excellent job of explaining the process. So exam questions are developed by subject matter experts. Every question is tied to that examination outline, meaning that it's tied to a specific task and a specific knowledge. And every question is tied to a reference from the reference list that is available. We do monitor the statistics on an ongoing basis to ensure that they're performing as intended. If we see a statistical problem, we will delve further into that issue. And as Tracy had said, we will take appropriate action to correct that. Candidates also, as has been previously said, are welcome to provide comments or input, and we evaluate those comments on a very regular basis and make adjustments if needed.
Thank you.
So is there a certain percentage, like question number 6? Do we have to have 12% before it gets reviewed? Do we have to have 50%?
Karen, I'll let you answer that.
So there's more than one statistic that we will look at. So we will compare all of them. A question that has 13% absolutely is getting evaluated and pulled. A question that has a 50% selection rate may also be pulled, but we're looking at the proportion of candidates to take it. We're looking at another statistic called point by serial. There's several different factors that we look at. And so it is evaluated on multiple levels.
Thank you. And if I'd like to add to that too, one of the reasons why we're always monitoring the statistics is because the exposure of items will change the difficulty of each question. And so sometimes questions are very hard. When it's assessing something new, if it's a new technology or a new law, and over time it becomes less difficult. And so again, we're always trying to be fair by creating exam questions that challenge the candidate. We don't necessarily want them too easy or too difficult. We want to challenge somebody who has entry-level competence, but just by the nature of the content of an item, it's going to fluctuate, which is why we look at each item every time we put a form of the exam together, because that difficulty is going to fluctuate to some degree. Thank you.
Are there any in-person comments? Are there any public comments from individuals participating on the WebEx? DC moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on agenda item 6, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists, or simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no request for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item number 7, review of dental assistant licensing statistics. I'm going to ask Paige, I'm going to mess up your last name, Reguli, Dental Program Customer Support, to present the agenda item.
Thank you, Chair Rita Espinoza, and good morning, council members. My name is Paige Regali, and I am the Chief of Dental Programs and Customer Support. Today I'll be presenting agenda item 7, which begins on page 22 of your meeting materials. This memo is an overview of the dental assistant license application statistics. It includes license status statistics that provide a summary of current and inactive, and delinquent and canceled licenses. Beginning on page 30 of the meeting materials, there is a table that provides statistics by county on population and on current and active registered dental assistant licenses from fiscal year 2021 through December 31st of 2022. Modoc County has the highest population per RDA, and Alpine County has the lowest population per RDA. There is no action requested, and this concludes this agenda item. Thank you.
Is there any council member discussion?
This is Councilmember Miyazaki, and I'm looking at page 26 of the meeting materials as just an observation and maybe something to think about. So in September, I see that there are 846 applications that were approved. October is 380, November is almost 500, and December is 338. And then on the next page, they have the licenses that were issued, and from September to October, it looks like about maybe less than 1,000. And comparing the numbers of applications that were approved and the numbers that were issued, I'm wondering what's the barrier to the, I'm not asking for an answer, I'm just thinking out loud that what's the barrier for these applications that were approved to actually move to taking the exam and passing the exam. And I'm just wondering if that's something that should be looked at through an educational process, or should we, because that's a barrier to licensure, right? So we don't have, there should be a lot more licensed RDAs looking at the applications that were approved, and I'm wondering, and I don't want to put any more work on the staff, but maybe consider a survey for the applicants who have not applied yet to find out, is it test anxiety, do they feel prepared or not prepared, what is the reasons why they're not taking the exam. Thank you.
Terry, you can go ahead.
Thank you. This is Jerry Fowler. I was also making an observation on applicants received. They're down 50% from 2019 to present. They've dropped 50%. Does anyone know why that might be?
Chair Miyazaki, I just received the ADIA annual survey of the CODA approved dental assisting programs, and their report for the last academic year is that the dental assisting graduates are down 45% among all the CODA approved programs in the United States. So it's probably a reflection of what's happening in California.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any public comments in person? Is there any public comments for individuals participating on WebEx? DC moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on Agenda Item 7, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and send it to all panelists, or simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, thank you. My name is Jessica Only. I'm the anesthesia unit manager, but I wanted to respond to Member Miyazaki's comment about the difference in the approval rate versus the license issue rate. The approval rate for the applications that are approved are applicants that qualify and meet the requirements to test. And the difference that you see in the next chart is those who have passed their examination, those who have had their fingerprint clearance and met all of the requirements for the license. So candidates are allowed to test before we receive their fingerprints, so they're given approval for testing. We may need to maybe update the wording on that chart. Those are applications that are approved to test.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we'll now move on to agenda item number 8, update and discussion on the status of the survey regarding registered dental assistants, expanded functions, administration of local anesthetic, and nitrous. Is there any council member discussion?
Councilmember Miyazaki, I was just looking at the letters of concern from the different organizations, and it looks a large majority of the letters have to do with curriculum issues and course content, and I'm just wondering if that, if this is being considered and something that could be moved forward if the curriculum issues and the robustness of the laboratory and clinical skills met the requirements of a dental or dental hygiene program. Would those letters, would the organizations be satisfied? And I'm just was wondering that out loud. I just wanted to have that as a formal comment.
Jerry, you can go ahead.
Thank you. So the survey, it gathered data on the procedures performed by the EFs that required the administration of local anesthesia, the percentages of cases that required additional administration of local anesthesia during those procedures, and the impact of additional administration of local anesthesia on the patients. The use of the nitrous oxide during procedures performed by the EFs, the impact that included administration of local anesthesia and nitrous oxide under the RDA scope of practice, and what it would have on the patients and on the delivery of dental health services. And I know everyone has read this report, but I just wanted to summarize a few things here. So OPS found that the responses from the EFs and the dentists to the survey were consistent. Both the RDA EFs and the dentists reported that the administration of local anesthesia was required for a significant proportion of procedures performed by the EFs. Both also reported that the EFs spent the majority of the time performing these procedures. And also both groups reported that administration of the additional local anesthesia was frequently required while EFs were performing those procedures. The dentists who supervised the EFs supported expanding, as well as the RDA EFs, the scope of practice to allow the EFs to administer local anesthesia and nitrous oxide after receiving specialized training. So to determine if the EF scope of practice should be expanded to include local anesthesia and nitrous oxide, there were 2 questions that needed to be addressed. And the first was, step 1, should we? And the survey results, which showed that there was an average of 15 to 20 minutes wait time for patients in pain to receive additional anesthesia before the RDEF could complete the procedure. And also, the survey also showed the majority of dentists and EFs were in support of expanding the scope of practice to include the administration of local anesthesia and nitrous oxide after receiving that specialized training. That was step 1. So should we? I believe the relevant non-biased survey data supports that decision. However, the next step, how to proceed and implement, that is a discussion that needs to occur to determine a robust, comprehensive local anesthesia and nitrous oxide program for the EF to ensure competency. And I would recommend assigning a committee to this task when we get to that step. But I do move to submit the survey results to the board for the dental board for review.
Olagi, second.
Ms. Fowler, can we get that motion restated clearly, please? The full intent of your motion.
I move to submit the survey results, the OPES survey results that we're looking at here, to the dental board for review, and to consider making or expanding the scope of practice for the RDAF to include local anesthesia and nitrous oxide based on the survey results. Then that would be the motion. And of course, then the next step would be determining the educational program that needs to be in place for that.
This is Tara Welch, Board Counsel. I just want to remind the council that the board does not sponsor legislation to expand the scope of practice. So part of this motion appears to attempt to encourage the board to expand the scope of practice for EFs. So I just want to caution the council on this matter, perhaps consider limiting the motion to submit the survey to the board for review. But as far as next steps to expand the scope for nitrous oxide for EFs, that's really more of an association issue that they would need to bring before the legislature to expand the scope of practice.
Okay, I'll restate the motion. I move to submit the OPES survey results to the board for review.
Could I add an additional to research possible education requirements for a program?
Please consider who might be performing the research, because as we saw with just generating this survey itself, board staff is overwhelmed and unable to perform this type of research. So if you wanted your current subcommittee to research this, you could ask them to do that at this level. That wouldn't necessarily have to be part of the motion submitting the survey to the board.
Okay. So I could change the motion, taking out the research and possible education requirements, put that into the subcommittee that Jerry and myself are on to follow up after this is presented to the state for the survey.
I would just say that Ms. Fowler needs to restate what her motion is, and then you, as council chair, could designate to the subcommittee to research education requirements for this topic.
Okay.
And then once Ms. Fowler has determined what her motion is, since Ms. Miyazaki already seconded, she will also have to agree to the new motion.
Okay, Ms. Ballard, go ahead and restate.
Actually, there's, I guess, probably two motions. The first motion is to move to submit the OPES survey results for local anesthesia nitrous oxide to the board for review. That's the first motion. The second motion would be to...
Ms. Fowler,
Yes?
we need to do a vote real quick on that, on your first one.
Okay.
Olagi, second.
Does the council have any discussion regarding this matter?
Is there any public comment on this matter?
Joan Greenfield, representing the California EF Association. I'm kind of looking through the Dental Practice Act here real quickly. At the end of the scope of practice for RDA and for EF, there's a statement that I'm looking for that says something about the board's, in addition to all the functions that are listed there, the board may also add regulatory change. If there's, for example, if you were looking at local anesthesia in another part of the Dental Practice Act is only allowed by dental hygienists and dentists, and that would have to be a statutory change. But in regard to nitrous oxide, there is no such limit on who can administer nitrous oxide, and therefore is something that the board, through regulation, it would appear, according to my interpretation, is something that the DAC and the board could move forward, because it would not require the legislature statutory change.
Thank you.
Hello, Tukas Okai with the California Dental Association. As in the meeting materials on January 30th, the CDA sent a letter to the Dental Board of California sharing our concerns to the proposal to allow RDA-EF the scope of administering additional local anesthesia and nitrous oxide oxygen to patients. There's a few different reasons for this that still can be addressed. The eligible dental team members who currently provide this level of sedation, they have the appropriate level of foundational knowledge in anatomy, pharmacology, and anesthesia. So that's different than training to be able to perform the anesthesia or nitrous oxide itself, but a foundational knowledge that if RDA-EF scope of practice would expand to include anesthesia and nitrous oxide oxygen to patients, there would be an additional cost and time for proper training to gain foundational knowledge, and that is a concern when already trying to decrease barriers to licensure. And patient safety is optimized when the most highly trained members of the dental team are providing care, and this expansion could potentially compromise patient safety as outlined in the letter. I also wanted to add that some of the questions in the dentist questionnaire are leading and biased toward the expansion. There's language that includes benefits if, especially in the last two questions, but there isn't language about potential barriers or concerns, so there is a
30
bias
seconds.
in the survey. So, for example, RDA-EFs were asked about the potential patient benefits of permitting RDA-EF to administer local anesthesia after receiving specialized training. So that includes confirmation-biased language. So overall, we have significant concerns about how this would impact access to care, foundational knowledge, and patient safety. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Bruce Witcher, CDA. Following on to that, with respect to the survey, I know OPES has done their best to conduct an unbiased survey. However, you have two populations. You have a survey that initially only surveyed RDA-EFs. Now you have both dentists and RDA-EFs being surveyed. They both have an inherent tendency to want expansion because they have a vested interest in seeing this. The dentists have made a substantial investment in training and getting RDA-EFs into their practice. And so, you know, I think there's an inherent bias in this study, and I would like you to consider that again. And we'll make the same comment from before the board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any public comments from individuals participating on the WebEx? DC moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on Agenda Item 8, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen or simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no request for comment. Oh, I spoke too soon. Oh, someone raised their hand and then they lowered it. So, okay, they're back to raising their hand. We have a comment from Lila Zaranam. And Lila, you should be able to unmute yourself. Okay, so we'll try that again. Lila, if you see a prompt to unmute yourself, go ahead and there you go, you're unmuted.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
My name is Lila Zaranam Erlich. I am a private practice owner, and I also teach dental anesthesia to dental hygiene students. I also teach dental assisting students. I see the fact that this proposal is aimed towards the practices that are larger, and they are trying to get the assistants to be able to administer nitrous and anesthesia in a larger setting, while the assistants do not have the background information that we are providing for our hygienists to be able to give the anesthesia. I agree that the safety of the patient is at risk because of the scope of training will be very, very limited. The students that take anesthesia in our program at West LA Community College Dental Hygiene Program have a background of information coming into our program. They take physiology, medical emergencies, dental anatomy, and a vast number of other courses before they even come in to take anesthesia, which is about a 72-hour clinic where they have experience giving anesthesia to each other. That is not counting what they go on the clinic floor. And
30 seconds.
It does not include the letters. The cost is significant to train the assistants.
All right, the next request for comment is from Dr. Kimbrough. And Dr. Kimbrough, hold on, I'll find you in our list. Okay, Dr. Kimbrough, you should be able to unmute yourself. There you go, you're unmuted.
Can you hear me, yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Good morning. I speak in support of Dr. Witcher's comments and the letters written by CDA, CDHA, and the California Educators Association. I do support that the science courses are mandatory in order to gain a foundation. Dental hygiene programs require probably about 2 years of science courses before someone can even enter a hygiene program. As a registered provider with the dental board and the DHBC, in order to give the anesthesia class to out-of-state hygienists, even some of the out-of-state hygienists, because their states do not allow anesthesia, some of that foundation is there, but because they already have that foundation, the course that's required by California for hygiene licensing is essentially review. We're talking about hygienists or RDAEFs that can be just on the job trained out of high school, and now we're going to have them give anesthesia and nitrous which comes with high risks, which also includes death. One of the issues that Dr. Witcher said, that there is inherent bias, and
30
I
seconds.
agree. There is inherent bias. The survey only addressed EFs and those employers of EFs. There's nothing about general dentists or just regular hygienists. So I don't know that the survey truly is unbiased, although I appreciate the work that was put into it. But I do support the comments that have been made in opposition. Thank you.
All right, the next request for comment is from Natalie Farino. And Natalie, you should be able to unmute yourself. And Natalie, you're unmuted. Natalie, you are unmuted. We are not hearing you, but you are unmuted. Okay, Natalie, I'm going to go to a couple of other people in the queue and we'll come back to you. All right, so our next request for comment then is from Dr. Michelle Hurlbut. And Dr. Hurlbut, hold on. All right, Dr. Hurlbut, you should be able to unmute yourself. And you're unmuted. All right, and Dr. Hurlbut, we are not hearing you. All right, Dr. Hurlbut?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that.
No worries.
Thank you very much. I'm Dr. Michelle Hurlbut. I'm a dental hygiene educator, a former educator of dental students. I taught research. I do want to recommend to the committee to really maybe take a hard, deeper dive into that survey. I do agree that in looking at the questions, many of them are, survey research is tough. It really is. It's not an easy type of research to do. And I do feel that this research is extremely biased. And I just wonder, I'm a former Dental Hygiene Board of California member, and I'm just thinking if I received a survey like this from, a subcommittee, I don't think it would be productive at the Dental Hygiene Board meeting. And so my point to you is maybe take a deep dive, look at this survey, maybe do a follow-up survey so you have really good data to send to the Dental Board of California. Thank you.
All right, next we have a request for comment from Heather Marino. And Heather, you should be able to unmute yourself. And you're unmuted.
Oh.
Oh, now you're muted. Let's try that one more time. Heather, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I was just commenting that the RDA-EF does require additional schooling. They are not just on the job trained. When there was a comment about them being on the job trained out of high school. So there is additional schooling for RDA-EF to be licensed in the state of California.
Okay, and we'll circle back to Natalie Farino. Natalie, you should be able to unmute yourself. And you are unmuted. And Natalie, we can't hear you. If you're talking, we cannot hear you. Natalie, you might want to try going to the top of your screen, clicking on audio and video, and selecting the call-in feature. It appears your computer audio is not working. Okay, so Natalie just entered the Q&A that she's going to call in, so we'll give her a moment to call in.
Moderator, are there any other comments, or are we waiting for the other commenter to try a different line?
There are no other requests for comment, just this one that indicates that she is calling in.
Thank you.
You're welcome. This commenter has just asked if she can just type her comment.
Yes, this is acceptable.
Okay, thank you. Natalie, please feel free to type your comment, and then I'll go ahead and read it for you once you do that. Okay, so Natalie typed, I am in support of Dr. Winters and the CDA, Dr. Kimbrough, as well as the opposition letter sent by the CDA. I am also curious as to why this survey was not submitted to the entire licensed dental community. And with that, that is the end of our request for comment. Would you like me to go ahead and close the Q&A?
Yes.
Okay, it's closed.
Okay, Jerry, you can go ahead and state the motion.
This is Jerry Fowler. Before I state the motion, can I make a comment regarding the survey?
Yes.
Okay. So this original survey, just to explain, because there's a lot of comments about the survey and the purpose, was to gather data specifically that relates to patient care when it comes to local anesthesia and reinforcement of that local anesthesia. So it had to be, this original survey had to be given to the RDA EFs and the dentists that supervise those RDAs in practice to get that data, like to find out, is there a wait time, or do they need additional anesthesia? And so that time frame, that amount of time, that's why it was specifically given to them and not to dentistry as a whole or to everyone. Now, there may be another need for another survey now. Once we've gotten this data in the offices that are utilizing those EFs, yes, it's a 15 to 20-minute wait time. Like I think Dr. Whitaker mentioned. But, okay, so that was the purpose of this initial survey, is to gather that data. But now I would like to move to submit the survey results to the board, the dental board, to review. And that was seconded, right? That was already seconded by
Olage seconded, yes.
there is the second, go ahead.
We'll now go to roll call.
This is Morella Turan. I will now call the roll. Epps Robbins.
Present.
Approve or deny?
I'm sorry, I approve.
Okay. Fowler,
Fowler, aye.
Miyazaki,
Approve.
Olagi,
Olagi, yes.
Pacheco,
Pacheco, deny.
Bliss,
Bliss, yes.
Reed Espinoza.
Approve.
The motion passed.
Ms. Fowler, would you like to present the second motion for research and possible education requirements for a program to go to committee?
I would like to move that the Dental Assistant Council assigns a committee to discuss an educational program for the local anesthesia nitrous oxide for the RDAEFs to ensure competency. On this committee, I would like to have maybe a 3 or 4 member committee. Well, we're kind of limited on resources. Make it 3 with definitely a hygienist involved in the committee as well.
Ms. Fowler, we would prefer to do a 2-member committee in regards to this research and education requirements. Would you like to continue with the committee with yourself and myself?
Yes, we could do just the 2-member committee. That would be fine.
This is Tara Welch, Board Counsel. Just for clarity, the council would want to use a 2-member group for efficiency's sake. It's not that the council is trying to not be transparent in discussions and research of these issues. It's just to allow the 2 members to discuss amongst themselves without having to go through the Bagley-Keene open meetings requirements for public notice and public meetings if there were 3 or more members of the committee. So a 2-member group just allows the 2 members to communicate more freely and quickly and efficiently and get a bunch of research done to present to the council at the next meeting.
Ms. Fowler, can you restate the motion for a vote?
I motion to recommend assigning a 2-member working group committee to the task of discussing a robust, comprehensive local anesthesia and nitrous oxide program for the EF to ensure competency.
So this is an educational program?
Correct.
I have a second. Is there any committee discussion in regards to this?
Would it be possible to separate out the 2? Because I think there's already a precedent for nitrous in Colorado that dental assistants can administer nitrous oxide already in another state. And so perhaps it could be divided into 2 motions where it would be separated. They don't have to be taught, don't have to be agreed upon together. Or is that already implied? Yep.
Yes. I think it's getting complicated. Is there a way to rewrite the motion or just make it all inclusive? Because I think research is very broad. So I think it's okay. That's fine.
All right, I'm going to rescind that request and just to suggest that we just go ahead with the researching them both together, but with the consideration that nitrous oxide is already approved and administered by dental assistants in Colorado.
This is Tara Welch, Board Counsel. Is it possible to consider, for the working group to consider exactly what level of supervision would be required for an RDAEF to perform these functions if they were properly educated? because I think we're kind of missing the overarching issue here. Ms. Greenfield rightly pointed out that the board has the ability to promulgate regulations to list the duties that an RDAEF can perform. However, the statute then lists separately the duties that an RDAEF can perform under direct supervision. So, yeah, I think the overarching issue is the administration of local anesthesia or nitrous oxide. Should that require direct supervision by a dentist? And if so, then that would require a legislative change, not a regulatory change. So that's one issue that I think the working group needs to take a look at, because, you know, researching all the educational components to administer or perform that task may be able to be put off for a while an association seeks a legislative proposal or an author for that to expand the scope for RDAEF duties to administer local anesthesia and nitrous oxide under direct supervision. So, Ms. Fowler, thank you for your restating your long motion multiple times. So I guess I'm just asking you to consider in your motion adding the component to for the working group to consider whether an RDAEF's performance of these duties, administering local anesthesia and nitrous oxide, would require direct supervision, and also if the working group, you want to have the working group research an educational program to perform those duties.
So if I understand you correctly, if it does require direct supervision, then we should not have the committee yet, possibly, because first we need to focus on getting a legislative proposal first, because it might, it's going to require legislative approval.
No, I am not recommending that the working group, the council, or the board prepare a legislative proposal to expand the scope of RDAEF duties under direct supervision. What I am suggesting is that the council needs to consider whether or not RDAEF performance of these duties would necessarily require direct supervision. That's really the initial question. And if so, if the council believes the working group should report back on this issue, whether or not direct supervision would be required, that's really instructive, because if direct supervision by a dentist is necessary for the RDAEF to perform these duties, a legislative proposal would need to be prepared by an outside association, individual, or group, because the board does not prepare or sponsor expansion of scope of practice bills. So I'm trying to simplify here. I know we've gone down a rabbit hole. Ms. Fowler, do you want to change your motion to direct, to recommend a working group report back to the council as to whether or not an RDAEF would have to perform these types of duties if authorized under direct dentist supervision?
They would be under direct dentist supervision. for
Right, but
these.
specifically to administer local anesthesia nitrous oxide, if there's duties, there's a duty list. I'm sorry, Ms.
No,
Fowler.
no, I understand. To do local anesthesia and nitrous oxide, it would have to be under direct supervision by licensed dentists. So what I'm stating is, knowing that, are we jumping the gun by having a committee to even discuss education on this yet?
You've gotten my point.
Okay, so I'm going to rescind my motion to put together a working group on the educational program first. Let's stay with the first motion we had, which we approved, was to take the survey results to the dental board for review.
All right, I want to thank everybody for a robust conversation. Obviously, everybody's very passionate about this subject, and hopefully we can get this handled under an appropriate vote in the future. We're going to go ahead and move on to item number 9, updates the discussion on research and dental auxiliary certifications, education requirements, and review of applicant status regulation regarding board approval, registered dental assistants expanded function, education program courses, and potential amendments. I'm going to ask Mrs. Parks to present the item.
Thank you, Chair Reed Espinoza. My name is Ricky Parks, Dental Assisting Program Manager, and I will be presenting Agenda Item 9. During the August 2022 Dental Assistant Council meeting, the Council approved a 2-member working group who were tasked to research dental auxiliary examinations, certification, portability issues, research education requirements in other states, and review the applicable statutes and regulations regarding board approval of RDA and RDA-EF educational programs and courses for potential amendments. The 2-member working group developed a survey with the assistance of OPES, created to collect information from the other U.S. states and territories that would clarify if other states require certification or licensure for dental assistants, and if educational components are required, and how those components are approved. At the November 2022 Dental Assistant Council meeting, the 2-member working group shared that there was a low response rate, and the final report would be ready at the February 2023 Dental Assisting Council meeting. The 2-member working group survey results are provided in your meeting materials, which begin on page 76. Board staff conducted additional research to find common practices or requirements across the states. Results of the research can be found in your meeting materials starting on page 77. Board staff asks to continue approving RDA and RDA-EF educational programs and courses as currently implemented. However, board staff recommends that the 2-member working group work with staff and use information obtained to assist with reviewing statutes and regulations for determining if revisions are needed to clarify and improve the program course approval process. One suggestion may be to clarify course approval versus course location. We are happy to take any questions you may have.
Is there any council member discussion?
So I think I will summarize the report that Chair Pacheco and I have finalized for this agenda item 9, and Chair Pacheco and I are still requesting additional time to review the results of the survey. However, we have several observations which have been mentioned by Ms. Parks, and one is about course approval. It's been observed that there are multiple course approvals containing the same content for a course that's already been approved, but it's only submitted due to the course being taught at a different clinical site. This multiplies the amount of work needed for the approval process and the amount of work by the staff. We propose that once a course has been approved, that is approved regardless of the clinical site the course is or will be taught at, and this allows the providers of the courses such as infection control, corona polishing, Pitt and Fisher sealants to be taught at the actual clinical site where the student or candidate is working in, and they will be familiar with the equipment and materials and supplies that are available at their office. Deficiencies in equipment, materials, and supplies can be supplemented by the provider if anything is missing or is needed. The subcommittee proposed a motion to change the language for a provider of a dental assisting continuing education course requiring lab, clinical, preclinical, and/or clinical requirements to omit the need to apply for a course that's already approved because the course is taught at a different location. This will minimize the number of applications received by the board staff. That's the first motion.
So I think you are recommending changes to regulations.
Yes.
Okay, so because of that, then we need to give proper notice to the public that you're considering changes to the regulations. So instead of moving today, which you really can't because we don't have any language before us, I would recommend, just moving forward with the staff recommendation to look at the regulations, and at the next meeting, the two-member group can bring forward a regulatory proposal that lays out what your specific proposed amendments would look like, and then the council can review, receive public comment on those proposed amendments, and that would be a better way to move this forward.
Right, so I'll rescind the motion, and it's not necessary for a motion for us to continue to review the information.
Right. I think that right now, you have your group. Your directive was to review the statutes and regulations to see if any changes were needed. You've done one piece of this, which is it looks like board approval of courses continues to be necessary, and you're reporting that, which is great. And now you've identified some additional issues that should be addressed through regulation. So the working group can just come back at the next meeting without any additional motions today.
Great, thank you. And then can we also just share the other observation, just because that way it's out in the open for the public to be prepared for public comment?
Absolutely, but also your meeting memo presenting the regulatory proposal at the next meeting or whenever the working group has it prepared. The memo itself should explain what the issues are and how the regulatory proposal intends to resolve those issues.
Great.
So that way the public will have notice with that writing as well.
Great. So Chair Pacheco and I will prepare a memo for that particular topic, and we're also considering presenting an additional topic. And does that require another memo, or can that be together in the same?
Tracy Montez. So what I'd like to do is any comments that you'd like to, bring forward would be important, I think, for the record. But I would like to say that it is going to take us time to really go through and review thoroughly. And it is unlikely we will have anything ready for May. But I think it's good that we have these ongoing check-ins to talk about this, because as we have had our on-site program and course approvers going through everything, we are uncovering a lot that we can do to streamline, revise, and clarify. So I would like to caution against anything for May, but to continue having this dialogue, and we can certainly have it on the agenda for, oh, and by the way, here's more. So thank you.
Great, thank you. And I just wanted to share another comment is that we believe that it is of vital importance that the radiation safety, health and safety course be modified to make the analog full mouth series optional or actually remove the requirement. And that's just an observation that we would like to see happen.
Is there any public?
I have a question. So we mentioned that we have one individual, one program applying for a course, and then they're individually applying if there's 3 locations that are underneath them. Do we know roughly like how many of those yet, or if like one person is applying for 3 locations, do we have like 10, 15, 20 of those?
I can look into that and provide you with more information later. I can give you information on what we currently have approved, if that is something of interest to you.
Yeah, I'm just curious to know how many times are we asking individuals, like what is the percentage that's impacting, where they're doing 3 applications for 3 locations? I would just be curious to see what that looks like right now, if we have the data, or it's just a comment of to see where that is impacting.
I think we're certainly happy to look into it. I think it's going to be challenging to get the data. There's been a little inconsistency on how it's been tracked and how it's been approached, and so that's why we want to streamline the process.
Miyazaki, I think from my perspective, the observations that I've come to from this is looking at the past meeting materials also for the Dental Assisting Council, and even though they may be inconsistent, there's still multiple names in multiple locations, and it's for the same exact course. So I feel that if we just look back at the meeting materials, we can see that there may be courses that may be already, program providers that may be already doing this, which I know is not appropriate, but it's a barrier for the applicants to travel to a clinical site that might be 2 or 3 hours away if they live in a rural area. And they'll, I don't think there's an argument against that, so thank you.
So just for clarification purposes, then, the board staff is going to just continue as they are doing currently? Okay, thank you.
We will essentially continue to follow our regulations until something can be done if something is needed to change that.
Is there any public comment? Are there any public comments from individuals participating on WebEx? DC moderator, please facilitate the line for public comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and submit it to all panelists, or simply raise your hand. I do see we've got several requests for comment. We'll start with Arian Turlet. Arian, you should be able to unmute yourself. All right, so Arian Turlet, if you see a request to unmute yourself, go ahead and click on that.
Yes, thank you very much. Ariane Turlet speaking on behalf of the California Dental Association. I would like to thank you for this discussion. It's very important. The California Dental Association is sponsoring AB 481 legislation that would create a pathway for dental assistants from states outside of California to apply for licensure. It is CDA's position that the Danby coursework completed for the certified dental assistant is substantially similar to the coursework required to be eligible to sit for the RDA exam, specifically RHS and the ICE coursework. This may change the trajectory of the proposition to review applicable statutes and regulations regarding board approval for RDAs and RDA-EFs. My request, although I believe that you're doing this, is to table this item until future DBC meetings so that the DAC and DBC has the opportunity to review our proposed language and have further discussion. Many of the items that you are discussing right now is included in our language. Thank you very much.
All right, and next we have Dr. Marty Lipsey. Dr. Lipsey, you should be able to unmute yourself. And Dr. Lipsey, you're unmuted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. So I actually joined in today to comment on the next issue, but I've been listening and a couple thoughts, please, for this area. I'm the director for a number of these approved programs at 2 locations. One thing that concerns me is that I've seen people get a program approved at one location and then become just almost a mass duplication at a number of locations around the state where I know that there is very little supervision or assuredness that everything's being followed at all the locations, and it's really just a expanding business proposition at that time. So I'm concerned about that, and just wanted to voice that as something that I know has happened, is happening in some instances. Some of these unapproved locations, have been shut down, but it's not the case across the board. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. I see no further requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll now move on to agenda number 10, discussion of possible actions and legislation proposal to amend business and professional code 1750 regarding unlicensed dental assistant course requirements.
Hello, Chair Chair Reed Espinoza and other council members. I'm David Brugman, a legislative and regulatory specialist with the board. I'll be discussing this agenda item. This is actually a continuation of an item that was brought before the Dental Council at its November 2022 meeting. At the time, the council directed board staff to consolidate the specific changes that we were requesting at that time with a previously approved legislative proposal approved both by the DAC at the council's April 2021 meeting and by the board at its August 2021 meeting. So what the proposal that is currently in your meeting materials on pages 83 and 84, the last pages of the book, the specific changes that I'm going to discuss today are those that are covered in yellow highlight and underline if it is proposed new text, and yellow highlight and strike through if it is proposed deleted text from what was previously approved by the council and the board in 2021. So the specific changes that we're looking at are, and because the proposal reorganizes the subsections of this section of code, what's currently in 1750C is in this proposal under 1750D. So specifically, we are looking to change the requirement in the statute that as it's currently written reads as follows. The employer of a dental assistant shall be responsible for ensuring that the dental assistant who has been in continuous employment for 120 days or more has already successfully completed or successfully completes all of the following within a year of the date of employment, and then proceeds to list the course requirements. So the proposal, as amended by our suggestions, would eliminate the language around the 120-day requirement. And as we're recommending the council consider that the section would now read that the employer of a dental assistant shall be responsible for ensuring that the dental assistant who has been employed continuously or on an intermittent basis by the employer for 1 year from the date of employment, has already successfully completed or successfully completes all of the following courses within 1 year of the first date of employment, and then proceeds to list the requirements. So the changes that we're bringing about today are relatively specific within a larger proposal that was previously approved and makes other changes to the proposed changes to the legislation. So there's a bit of needle threading, legally speaking, that we're trying to do here, and so there may be some confusion that I hope to provide clarification for as we move forward. The specific issue that we're trying to address here is that there's been confusion about proper counting of the 120-day requirement, and the proposed changes that we are advocating for in the proposal are basically removing that 120-day requirement to simplify the accounting that needs to be in place for the employers of unlicensed dental assistants to ensure that course completion requirements are made. So at this time, I'd like to open it up to any board questions or discussions. Sorry, counsel, I apologize.
So my understanding in number 2, you're crossing out an 8-hour course of infection control?
So because of the previously approved proposal, the infection control course is now in what is subsection C in this full legislative proposal. And that language was previously approved by the council and the board in 2021. So, go ahead.
I would say, so when we brought this to the council, we were reminded that the council had looked at the infection control piece earlier. So that's why we then decided to implement both of them together and bring it back to the council to look at the entire package and then move it on to the board. So our goal, board staff's goal, is that if you approve this as it is stated without substantive changes, it can go to the board tomorrow because it is on their agenda and they are aware of this. If there are substantive changes made, then we will not be able to take it to the board tomorrow. But because a part of this has already been approved by the council and the board, we're hoping that, again, board staff is recommending that the clarification on the 120 days will be acceptable as we have done this and we can just continue moving this forward. And as I had mentioned before, that there seemed to be early on in my tenure with the board confusion over that 120 days, and so I thought this is a great time to clarify that.
Can I go to one motion?
We do have suggested motion language in the memo that is in page 82 of the meeting materials.
Do you want to go ahead and do that?
So for, a quick rundown of what these motions are. Motion 1 is just accept the language as is and recommend that to the board. Motion 2 is if you needed to make changes to this language. And number 3 is no motion at all.
And just to clarify, if the council opts to take option 3, only the highlighted text, it would not go forward. Everything else, as mentioned, has already been approved by the council and by the board.
Miyazaki, I make a motion to recommend to the board inclusion in the board sunset review report of the revised legislative proposal to amend BPC section 1750 to add new subdivision C to clarify infection control course requirements, renumber the subdivisions, and amend subdivision D to clarify the timing of the completion of the other required courses.
Reed Espinoza, second.
Ms. Fowler has her hand up.
Go ahead.
I was just going to second, that's all.
Is there any council member comments? Is there any public comments?
Melody Randolph, representing the Dental Assisting Alliance, and I would just like to say that we're thrilled with this language. It's been a long time coming, and for public safety as well as employee safety, and in collaboration with OSHA requirements of needing to have training prior to exposure to blood and OPIM. This is long awaited, and we're excited to see this move forward. Thank you.
Is there any public comments? Individuals participating on WebEx, DC moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and submit it to all panelists, or simply raise your hand. I do see requests for comment, starting with Dr. Marty Lipsey. And Dr. Lipsey, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Good morning again. So I'm Dr. Marty Lipsey. I am the director of 2 approved 8-hour infection control programs. I wanted to express my agreement that this is a significant positive improvement in language. The only addition to that I wanted to bring up is it's clear in C and D that the language, the wording is that the employer shall be responsible for ensuring. My only concern, and I had to step away earlier this morning to deal with this exact situation, I would think it's your intent, although I'm not 100% sure, that the employer is also responsible for the cost of these programs. We have that question come up, and I think dentists often don't understand, don't think, and again, I'm reading into what the intention is here. But if the intention is that the employer should bear the cost, then I think it would be very helpful, especially to unlicensed dental assistants, that it's a burden to sometimes to specify that rather than leave that to more of a question. Thank you.
All right, the next request for comment is from Ariane Turlet. And Ariane, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Dr. Ariane Turlet, representing the California Dental Association. So the California Dental Association is supportive of optimizing patient safety and provider training. I also have served as a member of the Dental Board of California, so I appreciate where this is all coming from. Currently, unlicensed dental assistants must complete the course within 128 days of employment, which allows for optimal time for foundation training and to understand the application of the education offered. We are in support of changing that language from 120 to a year. There is currently no evidence of infectious disease outbreaks with the current training protocol for dental assistants. Unlicensed dental assistants are learning appropriately on the job and gain context and experience for the more in-depth coursework that they have to complete in a year. Additionally, the 2-hour Cal OSHA required bloodborne pathogens course is substantial in offering foundational education to apply infection control measures while performing basic supportive dental procedures involving potential exposure to blood, saliva, and other potentially infectious materials. The CDA respectfully opposes the need for the infection control class prior to being able to treat patients. We are introducing legislation that would actually contradict this. Basically, this legislation, as you're proposing, would contradict the opportunity for new dental assistants to start training and practice in the dental office and the time frame that is currently acceptable. Furthermore, dental assistants will not have the context of applicability of the 8-hour infection control course until the initial exposure to dental offices. Again, we are introducing legislation. I would ask that this be tabled so that you look at our language moving forward before a decision is made. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. I see no further requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes.
Okay.
Repeat the motion.
I just had a quick comment about Dr. Lipsy's concern about whether or not this proposal would require the supervising dentist to pay the cost of the courses. And I would just say that this proposal doesn't change the existing requirement for dentists to ensure the individual has completed the courses, and that's all this says. There's no additional cost component, doesn't specifically state that the dentist or employer has to ensure and pay the cost of the course. So no, we are not recommending that the employer pay the cost of the courses. Of course, that would be potentially a good practice to assist their employees in complying with the law.
Miyazaki restating the motion. The motion is to move to recommend the board inclusion in the board's sunset review report of the revised legislative proposal to amend BPC Section 1750 to add new subdivision C, to clarify infection control course requirements, renumber the subdivisions, and amend subdivision D to clarify the timing of the completion of the other required courses.
Go ahead and ask for a roll call.
This is Morella Teran. I will now call the roll. Epps Robbins,
Aye.
Fowler,
Fowler, aye.
Miyazaki,
Aye.
Alagi,
Olagi, yes.
Pacheco,
Pacheco, aye.
Bliss,
Yes.
Reed Espinoza.
Approved.
The motion passed.
This one here. Thank you. This concludes the February 9th, 2023 Dental Assistant Council meeting. This meeting is adjourned.